According to CUAPB, Communities United Against Police brutality is considered the use of excessive or unnecessary force, misconduct, and abuse of authority by law enforcement personnel. These graphs show how Black people are more likely to be unarmed victims of police brutality.
I think it's harmful. It's clearly police brutality is clearly harmful because it harms the individuals, but it also harms the communities in a number of ways. First, people don't have any trust for policing or police. They would not call the police in many cases. I frankly wouldn't call the police in most situations unless I had to. And some of the people that we see deal with things like, people we're working with have not just physical harm and psychological harm, but they have legal woes. They have sometimes their housing is affected, their jobs, things of that nature. And it's, due to poor policing. It causes, I think, historical trauma, but also, current traumas to whole communities.
This matters because all people have human rights. That includes Black people, and this brutality they endure is a violation of those rights. For example, Article 5 of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights states, "No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, but the people killed by police were subjected to cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment." Article 7 states that all are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination and violation of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. But police discriminate Black people all the time. Article 9 says that no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile, but all the unarmed Black people killed by police were subjected to arbitrary exile. All this matters because Black people are just that. They are people with lives and families just like you.
Having been brutalized, you don't have any control over your body. You don't have control over your legal circumstances. Like I said, your housing, your job, things like that. Things get wildly out of control for you. And it's one of the most disempowering experiences you can have. So solutions are really important to talk about because one of the things about police brutality, there are some things that can happen nationally around certain kinds of policies and things like that, but most of this has to happen locally because every police department is different and we want to pay attention to their policies and what's called practices. And policies are like the written policies that everybody has to follow in any job site, right? Police have additional policies about things like the use of force and that kind of thing because they are given more power. They have more policies. And then there's what we call practices, which is whether or not people actually follow those policies and whether or not they're disciplined if they don't. So when you don't set situations up where people actually have a consequence for their conduct, then they have a tendency to engage in more of that type of conduct. So you have to have good policies in place. You have to discipline those policies, and you have to be consistent in your discipline because if you discipline one officer but not another, then the one officer that gets disciplined will get their discipline overturned by arbitration. So you have to be very consistent in your discipline. In Minneapolis, for example, there's the Office of Police Conduct Review, and that's where people file their complaints. And in 6 years, they filed about 2,500 or so complaints, and only 9 have been sustained and disciplined. 9 in 6 years. That is ridiculous. That is a rate of 0.4%, like less than 1%. The national average for civilian oversight is 7 to 8%. So we are like the low end outliers. We're like ridiculous, right? We have no discipline going on in this city at all, and which is why we have so many issues in this city. It's the same thing in St. Paul. St. Paul's got this thing, the PCIARC, and they have a really pathetic record also. They're about 3 to 4% sustained rate against 7 to 8% nationally. So they're like half of what they should be. We have several solutions that we're working on. One of the other things is to end a practice called fear-based training. And you might have heard that Minneapolis recently did that. Fear-based training is a kind of training that officers take that essentially teaches them that there's danger around every corner and everybody in the community is an enemy combatant. It's almost like military training. And, it makes officers very jittery. It turns them into cowards, frankly. And when they, take things up in that way, then that's how people get shot. So Philando Castile, for example, Yanez, the officer who killed Philando, had basically been had 56 hours of that fear-based training, and he had just had it the month before he killed Philando, but he'd only had 4 hours of de-escalation training. So that sets a mindset for officers that is very dangerous. We've got to address the way the courts address police brutality. All the federal courts are grouped in circuits, and we're in what's called the 8th Circuit. This is the most conservative circuit in the country for police cases. Better than 90% of lawsuits against police get thrown out. Most people don't know that. And so it's very hard for people to get any measure of justice in this system at all. We've been working to require police officers to carry their own professional liability insurance. And what that would do is the cities could pay the base rate for that insurance, but any overage because of the police officer's conduct or their history would come out of their pocket. And what that would do is basically give them a consequence for bad behavior, or give them a big incentive not to engage in it in the first place. And that's what we really want. We want them to not engage in the conduct, So we teach people techniques of how to de-escalate when the officer is escalating. And because our thing is always about, we want people to be as safe as possible in their encounters with police, to come out as unharmed as possible. Waiting until something bad happens and then responding to it is a reactive thing, and that's not a good way to stop this issue. So we can't just wait for bad things to happen. So that's why we started this group. We started it to deal with the day-to-day abuses, which we think create a climate to allow the bigger abuses to occur.
What can you do? You can help spread awareness. Tell your friends and family about it. Follow CUAPB on social media. Join protests. And lastly,
like I said, there's nothing magical about doing it. Just get involved, learn what the issues are in your own area, and get busy taking them up. If you can get involved in ours, I'd love it. But you can get involved in any of the other groups that are out there doing this work, but just get involved. Pick one and work with them. Somebody that you like the solutions they're proposing, get behind it and work with them.